15 Minutes with Riz, the annals of history and tank talks, all that and more on today's Number 2 show. Welcome back to the Number 2 show, brought to you by 18 North Central Tactical Laser Tag and the Number 2 show. I am your host, Rafe Williams. I am happy to be here. I'm excited to do a show for you guys today. Got a whole bunch of cool stuff lined up for you. Can't wait to talk about it. So all of you poo-poo heads, all of you duty danglers, all of you fans of the Number 2 show, the Number 2 Army. Yeah, I don't know what I'm calling you guys yet. The Bowl Patrol. Who knows? That's tight. The Bowl Patrol. Remember that guy? What was that on? What's the original singing one?
American Idol.
American Idol. He's here, folks. Let's get into it. Let's get into the first segment of the show because he already spoke in the other stall. It's Riz. He's here. And 15 Minutes with Riz brought to you by Rogers Service and Towing. Let's do it. Welcome, Scott Rizzuto. Thanks for the save.
I didn't mean to reveal myself too early.
That's okay.
Spoil the surprise.
Well, I kind of needed you. I kind of needed you on that because I was like, man, I remember it was one of the, there's so many of those damn shows now.
It's Soul Patrol was Taylor Hicks.
Taylor Hicks, Soul Patrol. Let's look
Soul
that guy
Patrol.
up. Let's start the show off looking
gray-haired looking dude.
Yeah, he was like a young, but it was like a good, it was the way I hoped my gray hair would come in.
He was like in his 20s and gray, like fully gray.
Yeah, he was like young. Let's look this dude up real quick.
So what's he up to now? What's Mr. Soul Patrol up to now? What is he doing? Selling Amway?
Fifth season of, let's see, what is he up to?
Soul Patrol.
Performed as Teen Angel in Broadway as Grease. That was in 08. Okay. Las Vegas residency. Moved to Paris in 2013.
Good.
Look at this guy. Now he owns a barbecue restaurant. You weren't far off. Owns a barbecue restaurant in Birmingham, Alabama called Saw's Juke Joint.
Okay, and I bet you every once in a while he gets up there and sings, and the crowd loves it.
Oh,
eating their ribs, dirty fingers, eating ribs with bibs on. Oh, yeah, is that Soul Patrol guy, Taylor Hicks, season 5 winner of American Idol? Hell yeah. And he makes a mean brisket.
I bet he does.
At U.S. Bank, when we say we're in it with you, we mean
I'm playing it. Let's watch a little Soul Patrol. Let's see what this guy, I kind of forgot, like, could he actually sing?
Yeah, of course he could. He won American Idol.
He won? I can't remember if he was one of the guys that won or just, like, kind of got popular.
No, I think he won. Season 5 American Idol winner.
Oh, well, it's a really great, really wonderful video I've pulled up here. Completely blurry.
Can you fast forward?
I don't even want to watch that one. It's terrible.
Screw it.
We'll try this one if I don't have to watch an ad. Here we go.
Okay.
It might just be our Wi-Fi. Here we go. Look, he's going off in this. Turn that up.
There we go.
Yeah, he like squatted down and really got into the microphone, didn't he? Woo! Soul Patrol. Well, there he is.
Right, Soul Patrol.
That was a lot of work to get a quick sample out of him, but hey, that's what happens when you do a live show and you don't know what's coming up. Man, did you ever watch any of those shows? Like,
we watched American Idol, the beginning of it, like the first couple seasons when they would like really make fun of the people auditioning. Yeah. Remember the first couple seasons of American Idol?
Yeah, when it was very, it was way more
soul-crushing.
Soul-crushing and exploitative, yeah, I was going to say.
So they would, the first, and it's not that way anymore, I don't believe. They still go in front of the judges, the audition lines, before they get to the finalists. But the first couple seasons, I would say the first like 4 or 5 seasons, I would only watch up until, they all went to Hollywood because then it got boring to me.
Yeah.
But when the people would wait in line for hours, hoping to get in front of Simon and Randy and Paula for that one shot, for that ticket to Hollywood, and they would go there and they'd be terrible and they would make fun of them, and you could see the
William Hungs of the world.
Yeah, but the William Hung made it through.
He did, but it was like that was like peak where it jumped the shark, and like the guy that they were supposed to be making fun of maybe became more famous than the person who won it that year.
Yeah, William Hung actually put out a record, actually sold pretty well.
Yeah.
But you could see like some of these people who had been told their whole life they could sing and they could be a star one day, and they'd wait in line and they'd get in front of the judges finally
and choke.
And not just choke, but be terrible. And
you loved it.
And I loved it. And you would see the hope and dreams drained from their life on TV in front of 20 million people. Damn. I loved it.
Yeah.
And then they stopped doing it because it was mean.
Well, it was mean. I mean, it was terrible. What's that called? Schadenfreude? That German Schadenfreude or something like that, where you kind of take pleasure in others' pain.
Listen, I don't listen to hip hop, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. It was that was what turned me onto the show, and then Simon Cowell was the bad guy. Remember, he was the bad guy. He was the mean guy who I related to. He was just so honest. I loved the honesty. Like, you're terrible. The people who told you could sing should be taken out of the street and beaten. Why did they give you false hope?
Yeah.
Why? And look at where we are now.
Damn. He was ruthless. He's kind of softened over the years.
Of course he has.
Do you feel like there's too many of those shows now? We got The Voice. We got... I mean, it got out of control, dude. For a while, it was like, it started with American Idol. Then it was like The Voice. Then it was like America's Best Dance Crew. Now it's like The Masked Singer. We're dressing up like furries and singing. And then it became like, so you think, do I look like I could dance? You had to look at someone, and I was like, do I smell like I could sing? Like, how far down the fucking rabbit hole are we going here?
I liked some of these reality shows. Do you remember Joe Millionaire?
Yeah, I love that show.
Joe Millionaire was the one where these women were vying to get the attention of a millionaire guy who wound up being just a construction worker who was like a bum and worth nothing.
Yeah, just a dude.
Just a guy.
Good-looking guy.
Good-looking guy. I actually wound up doing a gig with him once. His name was Evan Marriott. Very nice guy.
Yeah.
Then there was the one where they were competing to get a job or be the CEO of this big-time company. It wound up being a monkey. You remember that show?
No.
It wound up being like a monkey who was
The Apprentice. Burn. Anyway.
No, actually, the show never wound up getting to the conclusion. It wound up getting canceled before the finale aired. But the big reveal at the end was it was like a monkey that was making all the decisions.
That's funny. They all thought they were like
they all thought they were going for like a real job that would be, a life-changing thing. But it wound up being a monkey who was just spinning a wheel and probably masturbating and throwing his feces, making the decisions as to who was to be thrown off the show or not.
Oh, well, like Goldman Sachs, if you really think about it. Yeah, those shows were great. Hey, guys, if you want to call in, 818-532-1420 is the number to call in. That's 818-532-1420. I encourage people to call in during the first segment in case you need me and Riz to chop it out. Now we got the number up. It's 818-532-1420. And somebody's called in. They've been waiting in the queue, so I am going to patch them through, and we're going to see if I live to regret this, if this wastes Riz's 15 minutes or if it's worth our while.
You've got 7 minutes and 30 seconds left.
Well, let's get into it then. Let's put the person on Host Room Live. Connecting call. You're live with 15 Minutes with Riz. Who am I talking to, and how can we help you?
Hey, guys. I listen to I work in construction. I listen to the show every morning. I usually listen to the whole show. I will apologize if I missed this part today because I got pulled away for a little bit. You guys were talking about Kirk Gibson's home run.
Yes.
And you played the call of Vin Scully. I was yelling at the radio. I'm like, Jack Buck's one of his most iconic calls was to that home run. I watched that guy hit that home run live on TV. It's the one where Jack Buck's saying, I don't believe what I just saw. And I'm like, why aren't you guys playing Jack Buck?
You know what?
It was one of his best calls of his career.
I don't know, Rafe, if you could pull up the Jack Buck call of the Kirk Gibson home run. I played the.
It really was.
You know what? You're right, and I apologize.
Vince Scully's awesome.
I played the Vin Scully call, which was the TV call.
Mm-hmm.
The radio call was Jack Buck.
Yeah. And next to Go Crazy, folks, that probably is his most one of his most notable calls. But I was like, oh God, play.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, we broadcast that to St. Louis, and I probably should have done that. But
all right, what are we looking for?
It's the Jack Buck Kirk Gibson home run call, 1988.
All right, let's see if this is it. Here, this is Jack Buck. Here we go.
Wait for another. A 2-out walk gives the Dodgers a life here in the bottom of the ninth. The A's are leading 4-3. Davis at first, the tying run 2 out. Eckersley gets the sign from Hasse.
Here we go.
Throws to first. The runner returns.
He can't forget Davis over there. Davis has excellent speed.
Kirk Gibson comes off the bench because he's hurt.
Steps out.
Yeah. He's hurt. He's hobbling around.
He's got 2 bad legs, I believe.
Yeah, and you pointed this out earlier. He was 33 years old, but he looked like he was 50 years old.
Yes.
He could barely walk.
That's how men looked back then. Yeah. Everybody looked old.
Yeah, he almost fell down, swung and fouled it off, knee buckled.
He could only swing with his upper body because his legs are so bad. And this is his only at-bat in the World Series.
You have the weight on your back foot, in this case, the left foot of Gibson, but then he shifts through the front foot, and all that weight
Eckersley
also looked like he was in his late 50s.
Yeah. This is pre-PED. Although McGuire is looking like he was already on PEDs at this time. They just threw over to Mark McGuire, and his ass is the size of 2 Christmas hams.
It's got no neck.
McGuire's ass looked like somebody shoved 2 Christmas hams down the back of some baseball pants. That's insane. And that's before he got big. All right.
All right, we'll throw back to Mark McGuire, who's got...
All right, there's another foul ball. I'm going to go ahead and get to the home run because I don't have 27 minutes to spend on this.
Here we go. This is it. This is it. Now swinging a miss. Okay.
I think this is it. Eventually we're going to get to it. This is great radio. A ball. It's almost funnier now that we can't get to the home run call. Dude, this is a 9-minute at bat. Isn't that crazy?
Gibson will get back in with a 2-2 count, and sooner or later,
2-2. I feel like I'm actually watching the game.
Yeah, in real time.
In real time.
I'm going to go ahead and skip because there was another ball. It's now 3-2. Now he called timeout, stepped out of the box. For all of those listening, I want to waste all your 15 minutes on this bullshit call that I shouldn't have taken because a guy got all hyped up and up his own ass about St. Louis when we were trying to make a point about the Dodgers being in the World Series. So here we go. Here's your St. Louis Jack Buck call that you just had to fucking call in and get.
Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable! A home run for Gibson. And the Dodgers have won the game 5-4. I don't believe what I just saw. I don't believe what I just saw. Is this really happening, Bill?
It is happening, and they've got...
Is this really happening, Rafe?
Yeah, it really happened. I really took that call, and we really watched the most anticlimactic thing I've ever presented on this show together. Congratulations.
All right.
We did it. Jack Buck, everybody. Thank you. As people are saying in the chat, well, what a thrilling 9 minutes of airtime that was for that guy to call in. That was what you... 4-hour show we did earlier. That was the thing that he got hung up on, was that we did the Vin Scully iconic.
I appreciate him listening and saying nice words about the
I do appreciate it as well.
The radio program. He also obviously loves this program as well. So
that's true. That's true. I appreciate that. But there you go. There's your St. Louis local geographic Jack Buck. He is an icon.
He is, and worldwide as well. I mean, a worldwide sports icon as far as a play-by-play guy goes. Father of Joe Buck.
Father of Joe Buck, who also is a sports broadcaster that lives here in St. Louis, Missouri. Yeah, guys look a lot different in baseball. I don't know how much time we have left, but let's talk about that.
We have about a minute.
Let's try to make something out of this minute. Do you think, I mean, I saw a picture of a baseball player the other day. It was like Darryl Porter or somebody like that literally looked like a pharmacist at Walgreens just put on a baseball uniform. He had like Coke bottle glasses. The dude looked like he weighed like a $140 soaking wet. This was a starter in the MLB in like the 80s. And I just feel like athletes.
I am all about athletes taking PEDs. I want them to take all the PEDs.
Yeah. Because like now they are.
I want my athletes to look like superheroes, like big muscled guys. I want to see, every player hit 50+ home runs.
Yeah, man. I feel like baseball used to be the sport that like the average man could play and go pro. Like you didn't have to look, like your typical. There's one guy left, and it's this guy. Can you share my screen before he walks out of here? It's another Kirk. It's this little chubby catcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. You ever seen this guy around the bases? Love this guy.
I don't know if I know this guy.
Oh, my gosh. He's just a little portly guy. He looks like Danny DeVito out there. And he's a throwback to a simpler time.
Oh, you want the era where Babe Ruth was eating hot dogs and smoking cigarettes?
Man, I like baseball because it was a sport that made you feel like, you know what? If I just went out in the yard and practiced a little bit, I could play without really changing anything about my physical condition.
Well, when they call it America's pastime, it means every American can play it.
Yeah. And now I just feel like we've moved so far past that. Everybody's such a precision athlete.
Well,
Everybody's
think about
built
this.
like an MMA fighter.
Those guys are making $7,000 a year playing baseball and selling used cars in the off season. Now these
That's a good point.
These guys are worth a lot of money, and they're almost treated like thoroughbred racehorses, where they monitor every single thing that's put in their body, and every muscle is precisely maintained. You know what I mean? These guys are worth millions of dollars.
Yeah, I feel like the money changed the whole game up as far as like who would be allowed to play. I miss the days when guys were like smoking cigarettes in the bullpen. Mickey Mantle used to go under the bleachers and get BJs from girls in between innings. That's a true story. Look that up. Mickey Mantle used to drink beer. He used to have a cooler of beer and girls to give him BJs under the bleachers at Yankee Stadium. That is a true story. That guy just went. Those guys are just built different, dude. Yeah. I was telling you this story the other day. Like Billy Martin was on a talk show, and he said that, and this is crazy. He said that Mickey Mantle was like, "Hey, let's go hunting. I know a guy 4 hours away. They're in Texas. They drove down to this guy's property to go hunting. And it was like a farmer, and he goes, "Hey, the family donkey's sick. He's old. We're too attached. Mick, can you go out in the barn and shoot our donkey? Like, before you go hunting, like, I can't do it. I can't let no one in the family. We're too attached." So Mickey says, "Yeah, I'll do it." He gets in the car. He tells Billy Martin, "That son of a bitch said he wasn't going to let us hunt on his property." So he pulls up to the barn, and he goes, "What are you doing, Mick?" He's like, "I'm going to go shoot his donkey to get revenge." So he's playing a joke on Billy Martin, the manager of the Yankees. Mickey Mantle shoots this guy's donkey, and he hears two shots, pop, pop. He turns around and said, "Billy, what the hell was that?" He goes, "I just got two of his cows." Billy Martin shot two of this farmer's cows because he thought they were literally getting revenge on this guy.
Well, he was just joking around.
And it was just joking around. He had to pay the farmer $800 and the butcher's fees.
Rafe, when men were men, am I right?
Different time. That's
Different
for sure.
times. All right, I got to go.
All right, that concludes this segment, 15 Minutes with Riz, brought to you by Rogers Service and Towing. Have a good one. We'll see you after a short commercial break from our sponsor, 9-minute YouTube videos of Kirk Gibson taking it at bat. And we're back. Welcome back to the show. For all of you out there who just took that 12-minute commercial break, because I have so many paying sponsors just trying to sponsor my freaking show, just having a good old time. And now it's time for the next segment, which I like to call The Annals of History.
From the Annals of History.
The Annals of History are upon us. If you would like to call in after this segment, I will be doing another segment. You can call in at 818-532-1420. That's 818-532-1420 to talk to me on the next segment. If otherwise, I want to read some messages and reading some emails. But right now, let's get into the Annals of History. Let's talk movies. Over the weekend, man, I had such a good time. We did a show that I have sponsored. We did a charity gig for Cardinal Glennon Hospitals here in St. Louis. If anybody's watching that, you can go donate to Cardinal Glennon. I'll put a link to donate down in the YouTube video or the Spotify description. It's Children's Hospital here in St. Louis, and we did a double feature, and we got to go to a movie theater, an old throwback movie theater, and we got to show some movies, and we did a Corey Feldman movie festival where we showed the Goonies and the Lost Boys in a double feature. Man, I got to tell you, it was so cool. I had so much fun at this thing, man. Both movies, seen them on the big screen for the first time, up on the silver screen. You know, I'd watched those movies ad nauseum as a kid. I've probably seen Goonies hundreds of times. Probably saw Lost Boys hundreds of times. VHS, friend's house, small little TVs. Great movies. They're always on. TBS, whatever. They were great then, but seeing them on the silver screen really brought them to life, dude. And I loved it. And I had so much fun. So many people came out to see it. But one of the things that I noticed and I loved, and I was kind of anticipating this, you know, when I was watching Goonies specifically, I was like, you know, a PG rating in the 80s was a lot different than a PG rating now. And I think a lot of parents, you caught up in the nostalgia, how much you love these films. So there were a lot of parents there that were of the 80s age, you know, in their 30s and 40s. They remember seeing Goonies as a kid. Or maybe they saw the version on TV that had been edited. Or maybe they saw, or maybe sometimes we get nostalgia blinders on and we realize that some stuff that snuck through the censors in the old days wouldn't get through so much today. And it was kind of nice to see those moments unfold in real time in a movie theater where you cannot pause. You cannot get your kid out of there fast enough. And in the first 10 minutes of the Goonies, dude, I was dying because, and people forget, and it was still okay to make fat jokes back then. I mean, they make Chunk pull up his shirt and do the truffle shuffle, and he comes in, you know, and they're sitting there, and Corey Feldman's character has to speak Spanish to the new housekeeper. And, dude, he's just talking. He talks about, and the kids are reading the subtitles, and they're laughing their ass off in the theater, and I can see parents turning a ghostly white. He was talking about keeping the heroin and the cocaine separate from the ketamine, and that all the drugs had to be separated because he was, you know, playing a joke on the mom. Told her not to go in the attic because it was a sex dungeon up there. This is a little kid, dude, 9 years old, translating Spanish. I was dying. And then there's a part where the Chunk character, knocks the statue off of the coffee table. And the statue is a nude statue, and it breaks the penis off the statue. I think we have maybe a clip of that somewhere.
Screen door! Mikey! The screen door! Hey! I bet you guys thought I was gonna drop it, huh? I know you would think that from good old Chunk. You idiot! Oh, look! It's not broken. It's perfect. It's perfect. Oh my God! What? That's my mom's most favorite piece.
Pause it.
Oh my God!
It wouldn't be here if it wasn't.
That's my mom's most favorite piece. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. The sex jokes from children were popping in this Goonies, and the kids were dying. Parents were immediately regretting coming to this, and I was loving every second of it because it's just a lot of stuff now. You could never get that movie made today. There's even Spielberg couldn't get that movie made today. Did we have more of it? That's pretty much it. Yeah, that was amazing. You know, there's a joke later on where he says, "Oh, you know, they glue it back on. They glue the penis back on upside down." And dude, the kids couldn't get enough. The kids laughed so hard at it. And yeah, it's inappropriate. And I get it. I get why we protect kids from any kind of sexual jokes and stuff like that. But honestly, man, sometimes we don't give kids enough credit because the kids in this theater, this generation's kids, were laughing just as hard as we were when they glued that statue's penis on upside down, and Brand says, "Oh my God, now he's going to piss in his own face." It's just funny. It was funny, and it was cool to see. It was really neat to be in the theater and see some of these jokes. 30 years, I don't know how old the Goonies is. What year did that come out? 85? Let's look it up. Goonies came out in, I'm going to say 1985. Look at that, June 7th, 85, brother. Come on. $125 million worldwide on a budget of $19 million. Spielberg got paid, my man. And it was so, there's so much going on in the Goonies that, by today's standards, good luck getting that through. We got kids cussing. We got kids talking about heroin and drugs. We got a penis getting knocked off a statue, glued back on upside down. We got a questionable scene where a young Sean Astin kisses a much older girl in the cave. Now, granted, they're both underage. This wasn't like a weird, but there was a moment where he was mistaken in the dark for his older brother and kissed by a much older woman. And not to mention the Sloth character. I mean, one of the greatest characters in American cinema. The kids loved him. That was a thinly veiled character. They never really said what was wrong with the guy. I mean, let's just pull up a picture of that character.
Pardons. And now, the final crowning touch to this cake. Take about a spoon of cocoa.
I'm gonna throw it to you, okay?
Put it in a very small sieve. You shake your sieve.
I'm sorry, sir. I tried to give it to you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't do what? I didn't do it. I'm sorry. What?
Those of you listening, this is a very large man with a droopy eye ripping chains out of the wall because he has a childlike mind and would really like to have a baby Ruth.
Jeez, mister.
Well, let's just talk about that for a second. That Sloth character is, is that going to go over in today's movies? I don't know, man. You're going to have a hard time getting that through without getting at least 20 Vulture articles written about how tone-deaf and insensitive it was. And I got to be honest, man, Sloth was crushing with the kids. It was crushing. The guy, great character, lovable character. They played around with the idea that his distorted features were from, being dropped or neglected as a baby, or that these might. But either way, we're still talking like physical deformities. There were, he had a cone-shaped head with a tiny patch of hair on top. Very much the Hills Have Eyes type looking character. Very broken speech patterns, as if, he had a very limited grasp on the English language, but he could communicate in an ape-like fashion. And Chunk loved him. I think he ended up going to live with him. I'd like to see that sitcom, Chunk and Sloth. There has to be some drawbacks. I mean, if this guy spent his whole life chained to a wall and, being mistreated, I'm sure there's going to be some long-term problems having him be your new roommate. But hey, you know what? Maybe that'll be what Goonies 2 is about. Maybe it'll be about Sloth's journey back in being, reintroduced to society. He may be like Goodwill Hunting for all I know. Sloth could have went to Harvard after that movie. I don't know what happened post-1985. All I know is they find One-Eyed Willie. And also, is One-Eyed Willie a dick pun? I didn't even think about it till I was watching the Goonies, but I was like, the pirate's name is One-Eyed Willie. There's a lot of dick jokes in this movie. You're telling me that was a coincidence that just got past the writers, that the pirate was One-Eyed Willie? And, of course, there's the iconic scene where they get on One-Eyed Willie's boat. Sloth and Chunk show up. All seems lost, and all of a sudden this mentally challenged, physically distorted man stands on top of a ship and says, "Hey, you guys!" We shouted that at each other on playgrounds throughout the 80s. Throughout the 80s, we're shouting it all over town. Having a great time. It's an iconic scene. It's an iconic character. I don't think you could get that through today. I really don't think you could get it through. And there's a little bit, that saddens me a little, because I thought, Spielberg handled it about as well as you could. He rips off his shirt. He's got all the kids after the show are like, my favorite part was when Sloth had Superman under his shirt. And he's talking to his mom. She says, rock-a-bye baby on a treetop. When the wind blows, a cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, a cradle will fall. And he goes, break! Fall! Mama, you've been bad. And then he throws his mom overboard. Now, this is beautiful. It really was. It's a beautiful scene, well acted. He's going to have a hard time getting that through, is all I'm saying these days. Now, I didn't embellish that at all. If you go watch the movie, that's exactly, all of those things happened. And the kids loved it. It was funny. I just think about so many things that went into that movie. And then the other thing I noticed while I was watching the Goonies, I mean, if you think about movies today, what would get past the censors? I mean, not much. There's not a lot going on. There was a lot of weird stuff in our childhood movies that just, they treated us like little adults. And sometimes I think we don't treat kids like that anymore. We don't give them the credit that they're little people. And yeah, they don't get all the jokes. And maybe some stuff's not appropriate for them. But sometimes if it's silly and it's funny and it's through the lens of a child, which the movie, I thought that was something the Goonies was really good at, was showing you the world through the lens of a child. The whole premise of the Goonies is up there, it's their time, our parents' time. Up there, it's their time. Down here, it's our time. It's our time. And that's how they got him to stay down there in the wishing well, even though Chester Copperpot was dead. And I started looking at the writers, and I didn't realize Chris Columbus wrote this movie. Chris Columbus wrote the movie Goonies. And if you think about what happens in the movie, there is also what I would call, today, I love it, there's a character called Dada. And Dada is a small Asian boy. What is his name? I love that guy. I don't want to say his name wrong because I love him. He just finally won Dada in Goonies actor. Let's look it up. Ki-Hai Kwan. I knew I was going to be close, but I couldn't remember the middle name. Ki-Hai Kwan. And he was great. He was in Indiana Jones. And then 30 years go by, and he was in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and he finally wins an Oscar. What a great story. Love that dude. But, man, even that character, I think, even though it was true to form, there was nothing really, he kind of spoke in broken English, what I would call, not necessarily an Asian stereotype, but there were a little bit, what I would call a little bit from the 80s. And that kid, and, he was an inventor, and he had all sorts of wacky, as a kid, it's all you wanted. It's all you wanted as a kid. He had all kinds of wacky little inventions or gadgets that were helping him out. He had slick shoes, spit oil out the back. He had a boxing glove that popped out. He had some chompers that, guess what, bit one of the Fratelli brothers, guess where? Right in the dick. They didn't care. The Fratelli brothers go across the log at the end. They slip and hit themselves in the balls, not once but twice. 2 ball jokes. Then they get up. Dada tries to fight him. He shoots his little chopper teeth on accident. Squeezes one guy right in the dick. He drops the gun. Hilarious. The kids were laughing their asses off. And I'm like, but then I started thinking, I'm like, oh, Chris Columbus, not Christopher Columbus, not Christopher Columbus, the well-loved and unanimously declared discoverer of America with no pushback whatsoever on that. Chris Columbus, let's do a list of Chris Columbus movies, but Home Alone is the one that stood out to me, and I was like, oh, this was, if you think about what's really happening in Home Alone, the precipice of that was happening in the Goonies, dude. The Goonies was just this little Asian boy torturing these two criminals, the Fratelli brothers. Through the whole movie, he's fucking them up with all these little booby traps or booty traps. That's what I said, booby traps. Another thing we shouted on the playground, probably politically incorrect today. But Chris Columbus wrote Home Alone, amongst other hits. I think he was involved in Harry Potter, and he had a lot of huge hits. 9 Months, both the Home Alones, Mrs. Doubtfire, Adventures in Babysitting. This guy's got quite a list of movies he was involved with. But dude, Home Alone was born of the Goonies. So everybody here who ever enjoyed Kevin McAllister torturing Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, Marv and Harry, and getting a blowtorch taken to their head or their hand burned. These are all felonies, by the way. There's a series of felonies that little Kevin McAllister did to these kids. Hit in the face with paint cans. Those all, the seed was sown in the Goonies with that. And I didn't realize. So that was a cool thing to sit in the theater, see a movie I've seen 100 times, and still find out new things that I hadn't noticed because now I'm seeing it in this venue. And I felt like it was such a cool thing. And that's what every kid wanted in the 80s, dude. We just wanted an adventure. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have it. We had our imagination. You know what? We didn't need 56K dial-up. We didn't need Wi-Fi. That was on all the time. We had great Wi-Fi. You just ride around your neighborhood. You'd find another kid on their bike, and you'd be like, and you would go make stuff up to do. And all we wanted was, you know, all these movies: Goonies, Flight of the Navigator, Neverending Story, all E.T. It was all these small town kids finding out that adventure was waiting in the backyard, and that's all you wanted as a kid, man. You just wanted to have a cool fucking adventure with your friends. You go out in the woods and you just hope something happened. You hope you'd find that little dude from Mac and Me, or, you know, you'd go through a culvert and you'd find out this culvert was a secret portal into some other world where, you know, everything's made of ice cream and kids have to skateboard their way past a wicked king. We didn't know. We didn't care. We just wanted to have a good time. And I kind of that's why I think Goonies will be all-time iconic classic, because it was at the peak of that time where you just wanted something cool to happen in your town. That's all that happens in that movie. There's a shootout, there's a crime, there's a prison breakout. The Fratellis get out, so now you got escaped convicts mixed with a treasure map and pirates' gold, and then you also have, like, it's their last little time together because the Goondocks are getting foreclosed on by this shithead who, for some reason, brought the paperwork to the beach, even though there's 9 missing children at the end of the movie. This guy's just there, ready to get the paperwork signed on this real estate deal. No one questioned it. There were some plot holes. I'm not going to lie to you. There were some plot holes in it. The older brother, Brant, was the worst escape artist I've ever seen. He gets tied to a chair by one of those little springy workout things. Not just... And they get away. That's how they get away from Brant at the beginning to go on this adventure. Springs literally stretch. He could have just pushed on them and gotten out. Not to mention, they didn't just temporarily restrain him. He was laying in the chair when his mom gets back home, as if he was completely incapacitated by this one stretchy, springy chest. I don't even know what that thing's called. It was big in the 80s. It was just like 2 handles and a spring that you worked your chest out with. Then he's riding a little girl's bike because they flattened his tires, and the bully Troy grabs Brant's hand, and he's like, "Let's go for a ride, Walsh." Literally all he had to do is pull his hand away. But instead he just pedals alongside the car. The only thing, he was the easiest guy to trap I've ever seen in any movie. This guy could, like, you could literally just take, if he put his hand on a piece of flypaper, he's there for the rest of the movie. This kid was... Josh Brolin was easily trapped. Thanos was easily trapped in this movie. But I loved it, and I think it was great. And that was just the beginning of the day. So now we take a break. Boom. Now we're getting into the Lost Boys. Hell yeah. Now this is for a little older crowd. This is a little scarier. This is vampire horror. We're getting into it. We're having a good time. We're having fun. And the soundtrack of that movie is dope, dude. And I got to tell you, Cry Little Sister starts off with People Are Strange. I don't know who covered that version. It's not Jim Morrison, but it's somebody's like, People are strange when you're a stranger. I'm like, what a great song to like lead off the Lost Boys. And then, you know, it's about two brothers moving to this town in California. New adventure. What do you know? Moving to a new little town, everything seems boring, but guess what? It's not boring because there's motherfucking vampires in Santa Clara, my man. Santa Clara's got vampire problems. They got a cool grandpa. They move there. They go to a carnival on a boardwalk. There's a free concert playing, and guess who it is? Maybe the most famous cameo of maybe any movie in history. That's right. Timmy Capello, the sax man from the Lost Boys. Hit it. This man is chiseled in stone. He has on more baby oil than a storage closet at P. Diddy's compound. And he's playing the hell out of that saxophone. Yeah. Come on. Sing it. Woo! He's got no shirt on. Ponytail. He's got chains around every part of him. Dude, she's so hot. Woo! Sing it. Jamie Gertz was so freaking hot in this movie, dude. I about lost my mind. Now Corey Feldman's playing a different character in this movie. Got Robert Patrick, Corey Haim, or Jason Patrick, Kiefer Sutherland, Corey Feldman, Alex Winter from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Let's sing it. I'll let Timmy play. All right, you can let it go. It's crazy that dude... That was it. That was his whole scene in the movie. And, man, it might be the most famous cameo of any movie of all time. I challenge you to find me a bigger cameo than the shirtless saxophone player, Timmy Capello in Lost Boys, where they never appeared in anything else. It was a one and done. It's the thing everybody remembers about that movie. They may not remember every single aspect of it, but they remember the shirtless sax man. They even did a Saturday Night Live sketch based on him called Sergio, where John Hamm plays him 25 years later. That's insane. That's how big of a cultural impact this guy had. Just playing his music on the boardwalk. And he's a very accomplished saxophone player and a cool dude. I talked to him via email. I was trying to get him on the show. Maybe I will in the future. But he's a cool dude. And he's still out there doing it, man. Timmy Capello's still out there doing the show. He's doing the song. He's doing a Lost Boys song. And it's tight. And Corey Feldman's in it. They play the, same thing. There's a lot of jokes in this movie. This was like a PG-13. This would probably be a hard R these days. There was a lot of sexual innuendo. There was a lot of blood and gore. But that, bro, you're seeing that at 13 and 87 or whenever Lost Boys came out. 87, dude, I nailed it again. I didn't look. Telling you, brother. I'm going to play the lottery today. But it was such a good film, and it was so cool to sit. I felt like by the time I was sitting there watching Lost Boys with my friends, it in the theater was an old throwback, man. It just felt like I was in one of those weird nostalgic Halloween memes on TikTok or something like that I was just caught. You'll see those memes on TikTok like it's 1993, Christmas Day, and it'll be kind of like weird ephemeral atmospheric music and like a soft glow on the picture, and it's kind of unsettling. It almost, when you look at it, and you're just like, I wonder if I can find one. Let's do TikTok of 80s Halloween night and see if I get lucky. I ain't going to look much. I did not get lucky. I got the opposite of that. I got a whole bunch of bullshit on here, so we're not going to do that because I don't want to spend any more time on it. But I do want to talk about, it was just a cool thing. Like when I left the theater, I kind of felt like I went through a time warp a little bit. I felt like I got to someone in the chat, hold on. Someone in the chat is trying to tell me the character Sloth was Slough. That's not true. Dude, I hate when people try to be know-it-alls. Now I got to look at the credits. Goonies end credits, 1985. Pull it up. Oh, I forgot this song. Sloth. Right there. Pause it. Pause it for the know-it-all in the chat. Sloth. Right here. John Matuzak. Sloth. Not Slough. So why don't you slough off? Stop trying to correct everybody. You don't always have to be right. I know you probably meant well and meant nothing by it, and I'm taking it personal for no reason. But hey, it's International Grouch Day. Look that up. That's true. It is. The movie was great. Lost Boys held up. Everybody loved it. I left the theater feeling like $1,000,000, like I'd been transported back to the 80s, like it was date night, and I was there with all my friends, and I was just like, man, maybe one of these girls be my wife one day. You know, you remember going to the movies and there'd be all the, you go to the movies and like now everything's streaming and everything's, you know, theaters got bucket seats. They recline, they rub your balls while you're eating filet mignon that's being like delivered by a drone. I'm talking about a theater, dude. I'm talking about feet sticking to the floor because it's got so much fucking Pepsi and Coke syrup and jujubes and milk duds getting thrown at the screen, and you're sitting in chairs, and they're not comfortable. They're padded technically, but they're tiny. You're rubbing elbows with the person next to you. You know? There's like 5 guys up front sitting a seat apart because that's how you proved you weren't gay in the 80s, I guess. I don't know why guys did that. I always thought that was weird. I always sat next to my friends, but a lot of guys like to do the one-seat gay buffer. Very insecure. Very toxically masculine. Glad that's gone. But I'm talking about a real theater, dude, where you're just sitting there, you're eating popcorn, you're eating some Reese's Pieces. That's what they're called. Don't at me. Reese's Pieces. Reeses Cups, Reese's Pieces. I don't know why it's pronounced different. It just fucking is. But they had old school at this theater. It's called Boyer. And I guess Boyer was the predecessor. They were Reese's Cups before. Reese's Cups were a thing. Boyer peanut butter cups. Let's look it up. Look, they're even trying 24-count box. Boyer peanut butter cups. They were good, man. They were kind of like a little bit more, a little thicker, a little more peanut butter to chocolate ratio. And they had them frozen. And I tell you what, man, they're pretty good. They were pretty good, and apparently they were the predecessor. They came out before Reese's, so I wanted to give a shout-out to the original peanut butter cup. But, man, just sitting in the theater like that, someone said, it's not Corey Feldman, it's Rory Speldman. That's funny. Nice. They had amazing popcorn. It was just nice to sit in a theater that felt like an old-school theater and watch these movies, and it was kind of cool, man. It felt like I went back to a simpler time. You'd be sitting in a theater with your buddies, and like, man, the girl you liked from school she sprayed so much, a whole half a can of Aquanet, took out about 3 square miles of the ozone, fixing her hair that night, sprayed a bunch of Aquanet in it. She had that big 80s hair. I miss that big 80s hair, man. When's that coming back? Sometimes a girl's hair would just look wet all night because they sprayed it while it was wet. I miss that wet hair look too. I'm a piece of trash. Bring it back. Bring back the wet hair. Bring back the big 80s hair. I'm trying to grow out my Kurt Russell. I'm trying to do my part. Ladies, help me out. Let's get it back. Everything's cyclical. It's got to come back sometime. I'm sick of beards. I want the smooth Kurt Russell, big hair, smooth face look from the 80s to come back so I can be in again. And I want big old hair. We already brought back the high-rise, the mom jeans stuff. I wasn't a fan of that, but if we're going to bring that back, bring everything back with it. That's my point. I just remember sitting in the theater and being like, man, one of these girls might, maybe just after the movie, she'll want to make out with me or something. Hell, I could be sitting here with my future wife. Who knows? It just felt good to sit in there, and it was just like an imagination land. You're watching a movie, you're being entertained, you're hanging with your friends, and that's what it felt like, man. And it was good, and those movies held up. That's the biggest fear. Goonies and The Lost Boys, #2 movie review. 2 thumbs up. 1 for the Goonies, 1 for The Lost Boys. Yes, are there things in both of those movies that probably would not be appropriate today? 100%. But you know what? They are of their time. And I got to tell you, if you haven't seen them in a while and you get a chance to see them in the theater, go see them in the theater or just rent them. If you've never seen it, if you're a younger viewer and you're like, movies aren't good, just check them out. Go in with an open mind. You might find out you love them. But, all right, that concludes the Annals of History. Let's take a quick break from a word from our sponsors, Childhood Nostalgia. All right, and we're back. Thanks for sitting through that super long commercial segment. I apologize for that. But we're back, baby, and it's time for the final segment of the show, Tank Talks. All right, it's time for Tank Talks, baby. If you want to call, now's the time. 818-532-1420. 818-532-1420. The only thing I'll ask of you is what I always ask of people. They tend to ignore. I know that I'm on another show, and I know that it leads into this show. If you have a question that pertains to the show from earlier, try to frame it in a way for an audience that may not listen to that show so it doesn't seem like they missed part of this show. It does make it difficult, and it does irritate the fuck out of me sometimes. And I appreciate it. I love the fandom overlap. I want you to listen to both shows. The Rizzuto show is the reason I have this show. But I also want it to make sense to people who are listening to this on their own. So, if you have something, just make sure, give me a second to reference it so we can know what people are talking about. And I appreciate that. Now, the other thing I would like to talk about, so the number is 818-532-1420. Feel free to call it in and talk to me, and I will keep the phone lines open. In the meanwhile, I want to get to a couple of messages that were sent, and let me pull them up real quick. I appreciate all the messages that everyone sends. I had one person just call and just called and sang my own commercial back to me, which was so unnecessary. Don't know who you are. Made me laugh a little bit. Made me laugh, then chuckle, then angry by the end because I was like, oh, they word for word just called me and sang a commercial back to me that I did, like during a commercial break. And I thought that was an interesting way to spend your Saturday night. But I appreciate it. I appreciate that you took the time to transcribe and memorize an ad and then call me and leave the ad that I already said to me. That was beautiful. That's something you don't get every day. So let's get into my messages here. All right. I was going to ask Riz about this, but instead I took a phone call that I deeply regret about Kirk Gibson's at-bat and Jack Buck's call. Didn't need to happen. Shouldn't have done it. In future, I may stop taking phone calls at the top of the show. I was that dejected by how awful it was and how poorly it translated to a good podcast or radio show. But you know what? That's what happens when you do it live. You got to roll with the punches sometimes. And that punch was directly in my nuts. And that's okay. I still love the guy that called in. I still love Jack Buck. I still love the city of St. Louis. But it sucked. And so let's get into this. I was going to ask, hey, Rafe, I just got broken up with by a girl that was living at my place for over 2 years and left mostly all of her shit and is expecting me to ship it to her and pay for half. She moved out of state. Whew. That's a pretty big ask, dude. Now, I don't know who this guy is. He sent a message earlier. You know, I feel like I don't know the terms of your breakup. I don't know if this was a mutual thing, if this was a she just up and left you. I don't know if this was a volatile situation or whatever, but it sounds like I'm going to take it at face value that she lived at your place. So I'm assuming she moved in with you at a place you already owned for 2 years and left all of her stuff, and now she moved out of state, wants you to ship it, pay half. I would say hell to the no on that. It seems like if she left you, you said you got broken up with. It seems like she made the choice to leave you. She needs to make arrangements to get her shit. You're not holding it hostage. I mean, as long I'm taking you at face value that you're not doing anything weird. Like, you're not holding her stuff hostage. You're not trying to use the possession of her things to get her to talk to you or engage with you in some way, and that this whole thing's over. You both want to be done with it. You know, the most I would do, and this would be tough, but I would do this for myself. I'd pack it up for her. I'd be like, hey, I'll have it packed up and ready to rock and sitting on the porch. You just tell me the day. Send a truck. Send 2 guys. Don't care. Come yourself. I can even not be home. I'll have your stuff on the porch. But I don't want to interact, and I'm certainly not going to pay for half. I think that's a fair way to handle it. Now, I've said that, and I'm going to read the second message that came through from the same person. Yeah, I did a little bit of coke behind her back, and she just ups and leaves me. That's the main reason, but she says if I cheated on her, she would have stayed. Yikes. Yeah, man. Sounds like she's the problem. I love, and dude, listen, I love this person. They're in the chat sometimes. They're cool. I have good interactions with them, and I wish them the best. This is very funny to me, though. This is what I would call peak mental gymnastics, where you're splitting some hairs that don't need to be split. So you're upset. You did cocaine behind her back. And admittedly, you said behind her back, which means for you to do something behind someone's back means a conversation had to happen like, hey, I think you have a cocaine problem. And you were like, you are a buzzkill. So rather than not doing cocaine, you secretly did cocaine. Now, I'm not saying that has to be a deal breaker for everybody. Some people are cool, hip to drug culture. I don't, I myself have done plenty of booger sugar in my time, okay? I'm here to tell you, more than enough. It's not a drug I care to do again. I've done like 2 seasons worth of snow in Aspen, probably in my time. 2 full seasons of snow falling on the mountain. Done it, skied it all, done the Black Diamond, done it all. So I've stared at the ceiling, white knuckle, birds chirping, being like, oh my God. How much is too much cocaine? And did I do it? And the answer was yes. So I've been there, man. I'm not judging you. But I will say, you're saying yikes to her because she said if you cheated on her, she would have stayed, but that the cocaine was the line, which leads me to believe that maybe the cocaine was an ongoing problem. If she's saying, like, yeah, if you would have cheated on me, we could have worked it out. But she's not trying to be in it on the long haul. I mean, granted, both things are grounds for dismissal. But that's a wild ride to go on with somebody. You know, if you found out, that'd be tough. You know, my partner now, had a heroin problem when they were very young, got off heroin, went through rehab, went through a program called Crossroads, which is great. If for some reason I just all of a sudden found out they were doing heroin again behind my back, that might be tough. Like, I would be there for them. I might help them get back into rehab. I would definitely be supportive, but that might be tough to keep the relationship going. Like, I'm not trying to be a square here, but I think, you know, if you're out, you said a little bit of cocaine. Would like to know what constitutes a little bit of cocaine in your book. Does that mean, like, you're like, oh, yeah, I did a little bit. I found 1 grain of cocaine and I did it. Or were you just doing it occasionally? I'd like to know more about that. But I would say, it sounds like she had legitimate reason to bail. If that's not her bag, that's not her bag, man. You can't really short her for that. And I don't think it's a yikes situation, not on her part. But if you're still in communication, it seems like you are if you're having these types of conversations. I think you pack her stuff up. It sounds like do some coke. You'll have her packed up in a jiffy, dude. Like, all you got to do is, you're already doing coke behind her back. I say go out, blow a couple lines of the devil's dandruff, and, man, you will fucking be pretty. You'll stay up all night. You'll have her packed up, efficient. You'll have her socks rolled tight. Anything she needs. You can have that shit on the porch. I mean, you're like a pack mule at that point. You know, I've been up late on cocaine trying to find stuff to do, clenching my jaw and rearranging my sock drawer at 7 a.m., trying to ride the lightning, hoping maybe the drink in my hand will counteract the cocaine enough for me to get some sleep before I have to be at work the following morning. I've been there. I say use it to your advantage. You'll get her packed up quick as lickety-split. So combine the two things you love, cocaine and being broken up with. Bam. Combine them. Put her stuff on the porch. Tell her you ain't paying for nothing, but it'll be the best pack job she ever saw. And I think that's the best way to go about it. And that's the end of that. So congratulations on your newly single life. I hope you find somebody out there that has the same enthusiasm you have for the party lifestyle. Or if you need help, I hope you get it. And if you need help, reach out. I'll help you. I'll point you in the right direction. Which leads me to, I think let's go into my, oh, Lord. Hold on. Let me shrink it down and go into my messages. I didn't see anybody on the phone line, so let's do a message. I had one in here. While we're on the subject, I got one here. I haven't listened to it yet. It was labeled Encouragement for Sobriety. So let's stay on that. Let's see what happens. I got nothing.
Hey, Rafe. I was wondering if you could give some encouragement for sobriety and maybe share a little bit about your own sobriety. Thank you. And also, I love you more than Moon now. Bye.
All right. Well, it's not a contest. Encouragement for sobriety and how I got my own. That's what I heard. And that, yeah, I can give you encouragement, man, for sure. I always tell people, if you're a fan, and I have a ton of messages, I probably get, if you've reached out to me and I haven't responded, it's not because I don't want to or I've ignored you. I've probably got hundreds of requests. And I try to tackle a few a day because I try to give them real thought. I don't want to do just like a copy and paste. I try to give a thoughtful answer to the questions you guys ask me about sobriety because, you know, there's always something interesting I find. I can tell you about my own sobriety first, and then I'll do words of encouragement. I always liked, you know what? I'm going to switch that up. I'm going to do words of encouragement first. And I don't know who's seen this, but I send this to a lot of people when they do ask me about. Here we go. This is Robert Downey Jr. talking about his sobriety.
Actually, I asked Mel to present this award to me for a reason, because when I couldn't get sober, he told me not to give up hope, and he urged me to find my faith. Didn't have to be his or anyone else's as long as it was rooted in forgiveness. And I couldn't get hired, so he cast me in the lead of a movie that was actually developed for him. And he kept a roof over my head, and he kept food on the table. And most importantly, he said that if I accepted responsibility for my wrongdoings, and if I embraced that part of my soul that was ugly, hugging the cactus, he calls it, he said that if I hugged the cactus long enough, I'd become a man of some humility, and that my life would take on a new meaning. And I did, and it worked. All he asked in return was that someday I help the next guy in some small way. It's reasonable to assume that at the time he didn't imagine the next guy would be him. Or that someday was tonight. So anyway, on this special occasion, and in light of the recent holidays, including Columbus Day, I humbly ask that you join me, unless you are completely without sin, in which case you picked the wrong industry, in forgiving my friend his trespasses, offering him the same clean slate you have me, and allowing him to continue his great and ongoing contribution to our collective art without shame. He's hugged the cactus long enough.
All right. I send that to people a lot when they ask me for words of, things that I love about sobriety is, he's a great example of that. That specific term, hugging the cactus. I encourage people to do that. That's the hardest part about sobriety, I think, is learning to love the parts of ourselves that we, in our minds, we don't love. Learning to, alcohol or whatever your drug of choice is, it doesn't have to be that. It can be anything. It can be food for that matter. But typically what happens, what I've noticed with booze, and, this is not for everybody. There are those that are born genetic predisposition. You take one drink of alcohol and it's in your blood. I don't know. Maybe you're 2,000% Irish. I don't know. But for most people, I think it doesn't start off that way. Usually alcohol, sometimes it's recreational at first, and then you find out, it's usually something rooted in trauma. I was watching a podcast that was about, the difference between simple trauma and complex trauma. Now, simple trauma is something where, there's something simple about it, but it's usually an event, right? It is a car crash or so sometimes it can be a sexual assault. It can be like very traumatic, pinpoint areas of your life. Like, this day changed my life. This day is something that is a traumatic experience that I have a hard time dealing with. And then complex trauma is a thing that is more rooted in daily indiscretions, right? Sometimes it's an abusive parent or a neglectful parent or a narcissistic parent or spouse, or there's all sorts of things that can go into that. Maybe it's you lose the death of a parent young, and then dealing with the fallout of that. The simple trauma is losing the parent. The complex trauma is the fallout that comes after, right? The day-to-day. The not having someone at your talent show or your PTA meetings, or these huge life adjustments that happen to people. And they don't have to be that drastic either. It can be smaller things. But I think what happens is we bury trauma like that, and we don't really even know where to start to unpack stuff like that. So booze or drug or, changing our body chemistry becomes a way to numb the pain, right? Or to at least punt. I used it as a way to punt. I didn't want to deal with probably some childhood trauma stuff. So every time I'd get drunk, I felt great, right? And I was like, I'm hammered. I can't deal with anything right now. I'm drunk. So it just became a way to punt and not have to deal with things. And pretty soon you've been punting for a decade and you're in big trouble. And what happens is the addiction or the alcohol or the lack of sobriety, it's a symptom of a greater disease. But it's a tricky thing because over time, the symptom overtakes the original thing and becomes the bigger problem, right? So it's like now, because you haven't dealt with these things, you haven't gone to therapy, and you haven't hugged the cactus and faced those parts of yourself that might be hard to face, this thing that started off as a medication has now become a full-blown cancer on your life. And sobriety is a thing that you go to a doctor tells you have cancer. You go to a doctor, they tell you have osteoarthritis. You go to a doctor and they tell you you have hammer toe, right? Alcoholism or addiction is the only disease that you have to self-diagnose. And that can be tricky because we don't want to, a lot of times denial, we don't want to talk about those parts of ourselves. We don't want to admit that to ourselves. That's a hard part. But I will say that there are a lot of good programs out there in terms of words of encouragement. You can get out, and I've been able to maintain my sobriety for 13 years. I'm at a point now I don't miss it. I'd like myself a lot better without it. I became a better brother, a better son, a better father, a better friend, a better comedian, a better human, all of the above, because I cut that out of my life. And it was very hard. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that it's easy. It's not easy. There's a lot of false starts. I tried a few times before it took, and my advice is always, if you slip up, don't beat yourself to death. Hug the cactus and start over. You know what I mean? Don't let it become let it cascade into another year of drinking or another year of not maintaining sobriety. If you fuck up and whatever your drug of choice is, and you're like, I did it. I drank, I smoked, I shot up, I snorted, I fucking ate a Big Mac. Whatever you're trying to get away from, just acknowledge it, be in the moment, accept it. Everybody makes mistakes. Be as forgiving of yourself as you are of other people, and try to move forward from it, and don't get caught up in that fucking cycle of like, oh, man, well, I'm a piece of shit again, so I guess I'll just live like a piece of shit lives. And then like all that negative self-talk, and the next thing you know, you're down a spiral. You're 6 months into a bender, and now it's harder to pull out. If you just have a speed bump, you can keep the car on the road. It's not the end of the world. I don't recommend it. I mean, try to avoid it. And what happens over time is the time becomes your friend. It's like being in prison. About that, when I did my first year without booze, I was like, all right, if I can do one, I can do two. And I got 2 in, and I'm like, well, if I can do 2, I can do 3. Then I got 3 in, and that third year, something changed in me. Something felt where not drinking started to feel like it didn't feel like a thing I was doing anymore. It didn't feel like an experiment that I had cast myself in. Because you got to treat it one day at a time. You can't, but and that's the best way to handle it. It's like, I'm going to do whatever I can do not to drink today. Do whatever I can do not to do cocaine today. I'm going to take all the steps necessary to not do the thing that I know is bad for me today. And once you start piling those days together, man, you start to feel like reverse prison time. Where you're like, I get out of this prison in 30 days. I can do 30 days standing on my head. Because it is a prison that you made, and you're getting out of it. You've done your time, and all your clean time starts to pile up, and you start to feel good about it, man. And it's like about that 3rd year mark, it started to feel, I stopped feeling like I needed to explain it to people. I stopped feeling like I needed to, when I turned a drink down or I turned a shot down or I said, no thanks, I don't need a beer, whatever. I stopped feeling obligated to answer people question about it and just be like, I just don't drink. And you don't have to tell people. You can if you want. You can be like, no, I'm an alcoholic, no thank you. Because some people do push hard with that shit. But I got to the point where I'm like, this is just who I am. Like, some people don't drink. Some people don't eat gluten. This is my gluten. I don't eat it. I don't drink it. I don't need it. I don't want it. And you don't really owe it to anyone to, and then it starts to feel like you're normal. It doesn't feel like a diet you're on, for lack of a better word. So there's hope. Just put in one day at a time, and eventually you turn a corner, and you're like, yeah, I'm good, baby. Then you just maintain it. You have to work to maintain it. And as far as my own personal sobriety goes, and I won't get too far down a rabbit hole on this, but it just got out of hand for me. I didn't like the person I saw in the mirror. I had an event. I had a friend of mine whose child had a rare cancer, and we had and I'd already been struggling and kind of just getting drunk and blacking out and looking at my phone, feeling like shit, not remembering conversations, just realizing that I was a binge drinker. I was a party boy. I like to get hammered. I like to go out. And then, I just started realizing I wasn't doing anything with my life. I didn't start comedy till I was 33 because I couldn't get sober until I was 33 years old. I would have destroyed my comedy career 9 times over if I was drinking, because I had not shown up for a gig, or I had gone up fucked up and done something, said something stupid, or just not shown up, or just been bad. And, I went to a fundraiser for my friend's child. She had a rare bone marrow cancer. She's alive. She's good. She survived it, but it was touch and go for a long time. And I went to my friend's fundraiser, and there was like a golf tournament before it. Went to the golf tournament, got completely annihilated. Couldn't even finish the last 9 holes. Blacked out. Went to this fundraiser for and I wanted to participate. I wanted to buy stuff from the silent auction, and I wanted to be present for my friend who was going through a hard time. And the thing about addiction is it makes you selfish. You don't really give a fuck. Even if you want to care about other people, you're always about feeding the beast inside you, like feeding that wolf inside you that needs to eat. And I went and I got hammered, and I was the drunkest guy at this thing. I was like blackout drunk. I don't remember anything about it. I was probably being annoying, like annoying people who were there to actually like participate in the fundraiser. Not in a, just a bull in a china shop type shit. And like, I remember waking up the next day and just like looking in the mirror and being like, man, I fucking hate the person staring back at me. And that's a dangerous place to be. But I will tell you this, disgust can be a powerful motivator. And if that's where you need to start there. Whatever it takes to be the catalyst for you to want to get healthy, I don't give a shit if it's positive or negative. Go with it. Don't do anything drastic. Move in a positive direction. And you don't have to wait until you lose your wife and kids and your job to be like, this is my rock bottom. This is where I say, oh, this drug or this alcohol is not doing me any favors. Get off the shit. You got to reach out. You got to go. And like a lot of people I know are like very averse to, and I had a very existential moment in the mirror where I was like, hey, the guy looking back at me it felt like it wasn't me. I felt like I was looking at a caricature of myself. Like I had become those little drawings at the state fair that have a big head and a little body riding a surfboard with beer cans all around it. I became that guy in real life. I was reliably unreliable. And I was useless. And I used to be a guy you could rely on. And I was like, man, you used to be a really stand-up guy, a really straightforward, what would 13-year-old you think of the guy you've become? And that was disgusting. And the reason I was disgusted, I was like, man, this little girl is fighting cancer. She doesn't get fucked up. She doesn't get to get drunk. She doesn't get to get high. She's staring death in the face, and she's a child. And she has the courage to take that task on and still laugh and have a smile on her face, and you can't deal with daddy issues, some childhood trauma. And it's all relative. We're all fucked up. We all got shit going on. But I was just like, man, what a coward you are compared to her. Made me feel small. It made me feel disgusted with myself. And that was a tough thing to feel about yourself. But man, it saved my fucking life. It really did save my life. That little girl saved my life. And she's great. She's alive. She's kicking ass right now. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my friend. But it's like, I had a Fight Club moment where it was like that. I was staring at my Brad Pitt and I was Edward Norton. And I was like, hey, man, you're trying to kill me. One of us has got to die. And one of us is going to die. It really felt that. It felt that real, and it felt that urgent that I was like, whatever good part of me was left was hanging on by a thread before I became this fucking devil of a human forever. And I was like, if I don't draw a line in the sand right now, if you don't dig in right fucking now and make your stand, you lose. This guy wins, and this is who you are for the rest of your life. And all the good parts of you die. And it just became a priority to me. And that's the reason it's always tough when people are like, oh, this person needs to stop drinking. I don't know how to help them. You can't. You literally cannot help anybody until they want to help themselves. And I know that sounds like a platitude or something you'd see on a poster, but that's just the way it is. It's just the truth. It's a universal fundamental truth when it comes to that kind of stuff. You can't want it enough for somebody else if they don't want it for themselves. They won't. They got to want to do it. And I lose friends still to this day to alcohol and drugs. It happens. Not everybody gets home, man. So be grateful if you're someone who can get home. Be grateful if you have a support system. And I just used that as a motivator. I was like, all right, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to fucking do this. And I don't care what it takes. And I got over all the shit about, I was so disgusted. And I feel like I had to push this little evil clone version of myself down, and you'd never fully crush him, though. Like, I know that inside, if you took an x-ray of my body, there's a little Jameson bottle right here, and there's a little version of me with his nose pressed up against the glass, and there's a cork in it, and he's like, let me out of here just for one night, buddy. I ain't gonna hurt nobody. And sometimes I think about loosening that cork, and I'm like, no, that's the devil talking there. I know you lying son of a bitch. And it's hard because that's part of me. That guy exists in me. That guy was a part of me. But you have to, you got to kill him. And you got to make it, you really do. You need to make it life or death, because it is. It truly is. And if it's not now, it'll become that at some point for you. I promise, if you've gone past the point, and if not, if this is like light, you don't have to get to that point either to stop. If you can just say, hey, alcohol's not doing any favors in my life, I'm going to give it up for a year. Better to do it then to when it's harder to get off. So I'm not saying like wait until you're having this dire moment that I'm talking about. I'm just saying you asked me about my sobriety. This is how I got there. And I just use that as a motivator. I was just like, if this girl has the courage to face death, all these children, the children's hospitals, man, they're staring right down the fucking barrel of the Grim Reaper's scythe. And they're doing it with a smile on their face. They're not running from it. They're not shrinking from it. And I was like, oh, you don't want to go to AA because you don't like all the God stuff? Who gives a fuck? Take what's useful and leave the rest. And that's what I would tell anyone about sobriety. I feel like I get a lot of pushback on people. Like, I don't like, if you need to go to AA. If you don't like it, go to NA. If you don't like NA, go to inpatient, go to outpatient, go to therapy. Try everything. If that all fails, try it all again in the same order, or mix it up. Who cares? Try everything 3 times until something fucking sticks, because it does take time, and it does. There's going to be some. You're gonna have some misfires, man, and it's okay. You just got to hug the cactus and move forward. And for me, it was like. I had a friend. I started going to AA. And again, I read the book cover to cover. I treat it like I treat anything else. If you're averse to it, it doesn't have to become a doctrine, but there's something in there should resonate with you. And just cling to the things that are useful to you. And I came up with my own path of sobriety. I was just like, this is what I do. I stay busy. I was tired of being reliably unreliable. The first thing I focused on was becoming reliable again. And I was like, so I'm going to make appointments, whether it's to work out, meet somebody for coffee, whatever it is. I made little appointment books, and I was like, the thing you owe yourself is don't cancel these appointments. Don't not show up. Because that's what happened is I got to a point where I wasn't showing up. People didn't feel like they could rely on me. If you need help moving, oh, be there at 10 a.m. Yeah, right. He's going to go out the night before I get fucked up, not show up, which I did. So it was about keeping my word. And if you can keep your word to yourself and you can keep your word to other people, that becomes a catalyst for growth. And it becomes a catalyst for you getting little wins to where you start to feel good about yourself and the needles on that cactus start to get a little less sharp. And the needles on that cactus don't poke you as often. And you get to where you can hug that cactus pretty tight and it doesn't hurt so bad. And then that leads to, you know, I went through the program. I did AA meetings, sometimes once a day, sometimes, you know, a few times a week whenever I could squeeze them in. It was just another appointment to keep. And you can go through all that, and I went through all that, and I read the book, and I had a good support system around me, and I let people know, like, hey, man, don't. And I cut some people loose, man. Some people, if they're at that point where they're still trying to party all the time and you're trying to get away from it, you got to cut them loose for a while. And some people cut me loose because my sobriety became a reflection of something they wanted for themselves but weren't ready to accept, and they don't like it. People don't like when you change, man. But you can't worry about that. You have to make the change for yourself. And the good news is that I'm happy to share is that you can get your credibility back. You can get your good name back. It takes time. You know, there's a line in a Tom Waits song where they said they hung a sign up in our town, if you live it up, you'll never live it down. But you can live it down. It takes time, but you can. And there are people, it's crazy, dude. I've been sober 13 years, and I still see people that will try to remind me of a low point. Be like, hey, remember when I saw you 16 years ago, and you were like, I think you pissed your pants at this party. And I'm like, man, I don't tolerate that from people. I'm just like, hey, man, I don't need you to remind me of my failures. I haven't forgotten them. So, no thanks. Surround yourself with good people. You can get your good word back. You can get your feelings of self-esteem back. You can get your reputation back. But you got to care about it, and you got to work on it. And I think now people would categorize me that way. I really do think if you ask people about me, they would say that I'm a reliable person, that I work hard, that I care about people. I also think you have to be of service. And that's a big part of the program is like, because addiction is selfish, you got to kind of live in helping other people. That's like, you know, the whole Robert Downey Jr. Mel Gibson thing is about he helped me and now I'm helping him, right? The only thing you owe it to anybody is to pass it on to the next person. And that's why I try to take, when people do email me, and if you're having an issue, reach out. I try to tackle it a couple emails a day and give it my full attention instead of giving some sort of blanket. So if you emailed me and you're discouraged that I haven't gotten back to you, don't be. You're in the queue, I promise you. And I will get back to you. And I trust the universe that it'll happen when you need it, or you'll hear from me when you need it. And I try to send resources, but Prevent Ed is a great resource. I send that to everybody. If you're struggling right now, go to Prevent Ed. They got free services. They'll get you into a program. And, you know, you can get your shit together. You really can. I am living proof that it can be done. I got sober at 33, started a comedy career later than I should have. The comedy career I've had great success in comedy. It led to my radio job. It led to this podcast. I'm sitting here talking to you because I got my shit together. So you can do it. And a good way to do that's to be of service. You know, like I always, Les Brown said a thing that always resonated with me. He said, the service we provide is the rent we pay for the space we take up here on earth. And I carry that around with me because there's days that I don't want to fuck with people. There's days that I'm having a bad day and I don't have any energy to give. But I try to find it anyway, and I try to give it when I can. And I think when you start, the good way to get out of your own self-pity and self-misery is to help somebody else. And I know that sounds pithy or, you know, too broadly philosophical, but I promise that it's true. And if you do those things and you put together your own program, you can get out of the hell that you're in and the hole that you're in. And that's my sobriety story. And if I can help, of course, email me, Rafe1057thepoint.com. And don't take it too serious either, man. Laugh at it. That's the other thing is like, you don't have to. I had a lot of fun getting sober. You know, once I figured it out, it was like I laughed at my own misery for a while, and you just come to terms with it, and you surround yourself with people that love you. And I think that if you can get out of yourself and help some other people, you start to get those little wins piled up, man, and pretty soon you get some wind in your sails, and then you don't have to look back. So if you're struggling, man, I know this is going to sound so cliche that I'm going to want to fucking smash my own head into this microphone, but it's, you know, every day is an opportunity for you to turn it around. And that's true. Every single day is the opportunity for you to turn around and walk in the other direction. You just have to decide if today's the day. And I think you can do it, and I support you. And if I don't know you, trust me, I love you, I support you, and I got your back. And that's going to conclude this week's segment of the Annals of History. That's my sobriety history. Now, a quick break from a word from our sponsor. We'll come back and wrap this shit up. Hey, well, there I am. There's my voice. We're back, baby. I want to thank our sponsors, my title sponsor, 18 North Central Tactical Laser Tag. Thank you so much for sponsoring the studio and sponsoring the show, and for Rogers Service and Towing for sponsoring the Riz 15 Minutes with Riz segment. We had a fun time today. We talked about a lot of stuff. Me and Riz got into some American Idol, Soul Patrol, or Bowl Patrol. Is that going to be the new name for everybody? I don't know. We'll see. We took a call I shouldn't have taken about Kirk Gibson, but you know what? That's how live podcasts roll. Had a fun time talking about the Goonies and Lost Boys, get to see them on the big screen. Got into some good emails about, you know, breaking up and sobriety. And I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's cliche also to say this, but if you like what you see, like and subscribe. It helps. I'm on Spotify, YouTube, but, you know, wherever, whether it's Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts, it helps me a lot. If you like it, give us a 5-star review. It helps even more if you leave a review and a message, or leave a comment on a video if you like it, because it helps other people find it, especially in a genre like this where, you know, I'm not a true crime podcast, okay? I don't really fit into, I'm a round peg, man. I don't fit into these podcast genre square holes. I do a lot of crazy shit on here, and it changes from day to day and week to week. It's really a personality-based podcast that happens in a shitter. They don't have a genre for that. Maybe I created it, but the problem is people don't know it exists yet because it's new. But if you leave a message and you leave reviews and you say that it's funny, and then you say that it's engaging, and you say that the host is ruggedly handsome and endearing, you don't have to use those words, but I recommend them. It'll help people find the podcast, which will help me create more content, which will help me spend more time with you guys. And I like hanging out with you guys. So thanks again. Until next time, this is the number 2 show. I'm Rafe Williams, always right front to back. Bye-bye.